Hello, this is Chris Downey, producer for UN50 podcast. My apologies for the audio quality on BJ this week. We will correct that moving forward. This episode centers around defunding the police. As always, BJ, Harmony, and Drew provide insightful and impactful commentary. Listen in and enjoy.
So, welcome back to show number 4. And what we're going to be talking about today, my name is BJ, UN50. And we're going to talk about the hashtag abolish police, defund police. And then also I kind of want to just maybe give folks a little bit more insight as to who I am. So hashtag me. And but we're just going to kind of have this conversation, that this buzzword around abolish police, defund police, and what do you think that is, and what it isn't, and I'll give you a perspective from my perspective of being law enforcement, what that says, sitting in a room with budgets and having to do that. So first, I just want to have my co-host kind of reintroduce themselves to you. Drew?
Hey, I'm Drew. I'm a rising senior at UNC Greensboro, and I'm just trying to make it out here.
I love that. So I'm going to follow Drew's lead. My name is Harmony, a social worker by profession. Really excited to be doing this work. And, I'm just out here doing my best day to day. So I agree with you, Drew, out here trying to make it, doing my best, and hopefully going to see some substantial change in this lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I've been dealing with since we just had the third show, but since we've been doing this, and I talked to Harmony about this, I kind of want us to talk about a little bit how this whole stuff has been affecting us mentally, and just because you guys are really but you're firm believers and supporting of mental health, and everybody making sure they're healthy, physically healthy, obviously, but also mentally healthy. And I think I just want to make sure that people understand that we recognize that, and we want Black folks to, if you don't feel okay, that it's okay to ask for help. And one of the things that's going on with me, I wrote a blog and just talking about this weeping that I've been experiencing. I'm walking around the house, I'm eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and I'm crying. I'm trying to figure out what is that about. And so I went to the doctor. And she was, I had some other stuff that I went there for one thing, but ended up talking about what's going on and just kind of started tearing up. And as soon as I started tearing up, she said, that's trauma. And I kind of knew that, but I just didn't call it, so to speak. And so, I just kind of wanted to sit with that for a minute to realize that, I think we all know the data behind Black folks and going to see therapists. We just don't.
They don't do it.
And we just don't do it. And I think right now with everything, you got COVID that's bringing out all these things about health, jobs. It's just a lot. And then, we watch a man get murdered and the things that are going on, and our bodies are just taking a lot of stuff. So I just want to at least acknowledge the fact that it's okay, to feel what you're feeling and recognize it, acknowledge it, and it's okay to get help. So I just need, like I said, Harmony and Andrew to talk about that. It's even having an impact on my wife. She's a white female, and she's really struggling with, where she fits in all of this. And she even made a comment about she was concerned that I was going to look at her like she was having some problems. She was like, I don't want you to think I'm, some weak white female having this issue when it's really not about me. She didn't want me to look at her as using this moment to go, oh, woe is me as a white female. And I wasn't, and I'm not, because I know that's not what she was doing. It's really struggling. So our relationship is having to trudge this trauma together. So we're seeking counseling as a couple to manage this. Me, because I'm Black, law enforcement and all that. And then she's got to figure out, because she's like, you are walking around. She literally has some concern in this moment that I'm out walking and something could happen to me. And I'm going, what? And so anyway, so I just kind of want to sit with that for a minute and see where you guys are and how you feel about that.
Harmony, you want to go? Your mix.
No matter.
Go ahead, Drew.
I was thinking about something as you were talking. I got off of a Zoom call not too long ago with my internship cohort, and we had a psychologist come and talk to us about stress and how most people don't realize how stress, anxiety, depression can have so many physical effects on your body that not a lot of people realize. And we also talked about the why can't I think about what it is?
Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
That's exactly what it is. So we discussed that too. So not only are we carrying the weight of watching a man die, going through a global pandemic, having the weight of, I don't like to use the word ancestors because I feel like that has like a so far away connotation and it wasn't that long ago. But our predecessors in history, that weight of that they carry is on our backs too. And then we have to deal with our life stuff that we have to deal with on our own. So I think that by itself is a lot of stress just in general. So just kind of echoing what BJ said, just kind of take time for yourself and figure out what you like to do. Because this is a harsh time for a lot of people. And I'm not a therapist. Please don't not say don't take my advice, but I'm not a therapist in any means, but I'm just trying to find the best way to deal with a lot of this stuff. Especially Black and brown people especially Black males who, just in general, therapy is seen as a taboo and for so many different reasons. And it's okay to cry. People have to tell you you're human. If you don't cry, then there's something wrong. So it's okay to cry. That's my feeling.
Yeah. Well, before you say something, I really appreciate what you said last time about slavery, that people, you're enslaved, you do all this, and then all of a sudden they go, and all the trauma they receive during being enslaved and all of that, and then they free you, and then it's like, oh, I've just experienced this years of trauma, and I gotta carry that. So it's like I mean, not that that wasn't anything that wasn't surprising, but it was when you said, it's like, yeah, that's just nobody is dealt, that wasn't dealt with. So, yeah. And then anyway, so go ahead. I just thought it was so cool when you said that.
So that concept is actually from Dr. Joy DeGruy, and she is the one who developed this theory called post-traumatic slave syndrome, or PTSS, which basically says that a lot of our adaptive behaviors that are masked as cultural are survival tactics. So, one thing that I remember hearing years and years ago in therapy, because I actively go to therapy, I speak about mental health, I help other people find therapists, is that the brain may not remember, but the body always remembers trauma. It has a really impactful way of actually rewiring your brain and your immune system. I mean, it is very primal, the way that trauma affects our bodies. So actually, BJ, what we could do is, in the description, I could link that video to Dr. Joy DeGruy's work. Okay. And then I think another good resource to put there would also be the suicide helpline. I think it's really easy, especially as Black folks, to not understand the implications, as Drew said, of depression, anxiety, stress, and a lot of this uncertainty that's going on. And Black folks are more likely to experience physical symptoms than their white counterparts, because that's how we've always had to process our trauma and our emotions. We didn't have the ability to speak out or to advocate for ourselves. So a lot of the ways that we experience depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues is physically. So I think also linking the suicide helpline. Another great resource that I would like to mention for uninsured, underinsured folks like myself is called Open Path. And maybe, BJ, we could link this as well. Essentially, Open Path is somewhere where you pay, I think it's a $59 joining fee, and then you have access to a number of different therapists who are willing to basically work with you on a reduced rate. So it's anywhere, I think, from $30 to $60, depending on the therapist, depending on, what their requirements are for what price tier. That's how I found my therapist, and is really the only way that I'm able to actively be engaged in care. So those are a couple of things that I think would be really, really great resources. I help people all the time find therapists. It's something that I'm very passionate about. Just helping people really get introduced to therapy, what it should look like, what are the things that you should be attentive for. If anybody is looking for any additional help, needing some moral support, I would be more than happy. I also have a mental health blog called followingharmony.com. You can follow along and see some work from me specifically related to trauma.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll definitely, yes, we can talk about, I like the links, and we will definitely talk about that some more. Yes, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for indulging me. I just feel like it's very important. I did a Orange Recycle Center, and I had representative from Alliance come to
okay.
to be there. Yeah, and it mainly was the people that work with the crisis intervention team with the police officers. And the HR, they hadn't got the EAP up to where they had a psychologist, because that's what I was going to try to get them to be there with me. And she was really supportive of that. So we had them come and just, because the employees are mainly Black males, and they also are reentry, they're returning citizens.
Great.
And so it was just this whole thing about, the Durham Police Department is saying we're going to teach you how to interact with law enforcement, but there's a lot of stuff going on. And just wanted to at least be able to tell them, what I'm experiencing, and also it's okay, and just have these folks from Alliance go, here's where you can get help. I mean, not to beat them in the head or anything like that. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to at least say, just recognize what you're feeling. It's okay. Ask for help. And this is how you do that. So anyway, it's just really important to me that we got to get through this. So anyway, the thing I want to talk about is just to kind of talk a little bit. Steve was with us on the last show, started as we ended. He talked about the defunding, and want to get an idea what you guys think about hashtag defund, hashtag abolish police. What do you guys think about that?
I'm thinking hashtag hell yes. Is that allowed? Do I have to bleep that out? Steve said something really poignant too. He said that it should be the natural progression of things. If law enforcement is working the way that it should, and if all of these other public service systems are working the way that they should, our goal should be to move away from policing. And this whole conversation of we need police because what if a crime happens? Who do I call if somebody is blasting music at 5:00 in the morning? It kind of reminds me of this whole Me Too movement. Remember when it was a really big thing when people were talking about, well, she shouldn't have dressed this way, or she shouldn't have drank this amount of alcohol, or she shouldn't have been at this club. It's almost like we did the same thing with men, right? We just basically said that they are inherently sexual beings that have no ability to control their physical reactions and also how they interact with women. And so I feel like we've kind of have that same type of, protection tactic for police. It's, it's almost like we're uncomfortable moving without them because we've never been able to really imagine a future where these things don't happen all the time. But if we look in places like in Germany, where there's not a lot of violent crime and there's also not a really heavy police presence, we can see that these things are possible. But when do we stop portraying ourselves as just basically barbaric beings with no amount of emotional regulation? I don't know. It's a very interesting thing to think about. Yeah.
What do you think, Drew?
I was going to echo what Harmony said about what Steve mentioned in the last episode about how, like you said, it should be a natural, progress thing that happens by itself. And I thought I had never heard of it explained that way. And I thought that was very interesting. And I know a lot of people, in the conversations that I've had with people who are around my age, didn't really know what defund the police meant. They were assuming that it just been they didn't really know how to define what that really meant. So I encourage them to educate and just kind of read about what that really tones down to. And just reading about it kind of helps understand. And I did a little research on my own just to see in different counties in different parts of the U.S. How much money was given to the police department versus the Board of Education. And I saw in my city, luckily the board education system got more than the police did. But I know I did some research that some others didn't. And I thought that was just so interesting how you could think that the police would need more money than the school system.
Yeah. I guess for me, I was like, why do you guys have to use that word, defund and abolish? I mean, I get what you're saying, but when you say it, people go, oh my God, nobody's going to be able to investigate crime. And it really doesn't mean that. It just means, you got to figure out, like you said, because you can at some point, if you give people and help them with their housing, give them living wages, all those types of things, then you really don't need having police officers run around doing social issue stuff. And you have to have bodies for that. But just to give you some insight as to when we do budgets, we always, sitting around the table doing budget time, they'll say stuff like, police department needs to reduce their budget. And the first thing that goes are the soft stuff, crime prevention, the housing units that are in the housing developments, and, working with the kids, anything that that's not related to responding to 911, those soft police athletic league, that would go. anything that you would automatically think you would want your police officers to be involved in doing those community outreach, because those are the soft things, because we want to engage. But if you tell us we have to cut our budget, we're definitely not taking anybody's away from answering 911 calls. And when people, so that's what would happen. That's where they would probably start. But like you said, we got to figure out how to make people understand. I think for me is you got to fund the police in order to maintain 911 calls. You got to have enough number of officers to be able, if your city starts to grow, your calls are going to increase. Your crime, whatever, that's going to happen. But what frustrates me is people sitting in front of the police department saying you need to defund the police department. But you got to understand, we're funded by the city, who takes care of your lights and your road and your water. The county has the social services part. And so why don't you go over there and demand that you increase the amount of money, increase social workers, increase spaces in mental health. So that's where that money, that's a different pot. So when I see people fussing and looking at city council and city managers and going, defund the police, well, okay, but that's the money we use to do the water, whatever. But the soft services across the street over there in Durham County building, but you're not over there yelling at them. And so for me, just because I know that's how that works, is trying to get people to go over here and tell the county you want more social service stuff. And then maybe the police department or the city will go, we can help with that, but we don't provide the stuff that police officers are addressing. Does that make sense? Like, we're running around doing homelessness stuff. We don't have a place to take the homeless guy, because all the beds are full. So y'all need to make something. But that doesn't come out of the city. That comes out of the county. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, like these other systems need more money. And so by taking away from the police department, taking away funding, rather, we have the financial means to invest it elsewhere. Like, it's crazy to me, it's absolutely crazy to me and mortifying that, police officers are getting, or I wouldn't say police officers, police systems rather, are getting more money than like housing projects. Like, of course, if people are homeless, they're going to commit more deviant acts simply because they're trying to survive. So for me, it's almost like this is just so easy. Like, it's common sense. Like, why is this not what everybody wants? Like, why do we not want social workers responding to calls of suicidal people? I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, BJ, when a guy called the police department and he was suicidal and he ended up pointing a gun at them and they shot him.
Yes.
And I just wonder how much, and it's not to say necessarily that, I'm blaming the police for that or anything like that. But I guess my question is, how much more impactful could it have been if we had a trained individual there that knows the signs of, suicide, and also knows what to do as far as like crisis intervention? Like, to an extent, we are expecting police to perform jobs that they're not qualified to perform. I mean, honestly, they probably aren't even qualified to be police with the level. I'm being honest. A lot of these guys got GEDs, and if you heard them read, you would think that they probably would need to go back to school. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of training. It's these homegrown good old boys that join because they really don't have another option.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because I was going to push back on that, because you said that it's easy to be a police, and it really isn't. But what I will give you is that there's basic law enforcement training. Okay. And then you really, depending on the agencies and stuff, they're asking for college degrees to even fill out applications. So it's not the easy, like Durham may do that. You need a college degree. Doesn't really matter what degree, but you need a college degree. But you might get somewhere like, a small town, and all you need is the basic law enforcement training. And you can. And
so, like, what qualifies you to take that? Like a GED, a high school diploma?
Yeah, high school. Yeah, high school, okay. 21 years of age. Yes, high school degree, high school diploma, 21 years of age. For the most, some small agencies will probably say, look, 21, high school degree, pass the BLET, and I will hire you. Whereas Durham might just say, and they'll make things a little more for you to come in. So it's not necessarily always easy. And then that's the other piece that we have to figure out too, that for me, Steve and I were talking about this before we got on, was that taking some of these obstacles out of the way of allowing Black folks join police departments. Like, you really don't need a college degree to be the popo. You really don't. You don't. I mean, what I want is a good human being. So if you're a good person, you've done the good thing, I can teach you how to be a police officer.
True.
You know,
but I will say that. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So, and I'm not saying that they don't need the education, but to get in the door, I don't think that should be a deterrent. That because especially if you are, and you've been, people, well, he's really good. He takes, he's just these individuals are good people. And then you get in the agency and then you go, look, within the next 3 or 4 years, I need you to get an associate's degree or start working toward a college degree. But to cause them not to even get in the door because they don't have a college degree, we're losing a lot of good folks. And we're going to do a show with another officer who, people will just calling him Uncle Tom because he joined the police department. But I used to hear all the time, kids on the street be like, guys on the street, like, I don't want to be the police. I know too many people. And I'm thinking, well, you just the guy that need to be the popo because you're the guy that knows the community. They like you, and we need you, Black kids, Black folks, to be on the police department. And then when you start having that, those are relationships, and we just need to figure out a way to help that. So anyway, I know I got off on a tangent, but we were talking about defunding police.
Right. Well, I
hear what you said. Yeah,
that's a part of it. I mean, that's a part of it, right? Like, I think all of it, we are coming from a place of privilege when we say that somebody should have a college degree in order to be a police. But what we do know is that when people go to college and they are more educated, they tend to support more progressive ideas like defunding the police. And I would argue, BJ, if your job is to protect and serve, and you carry a gun and you have the ability to kill somebody basically without any repercussions, you have the ability to write arrest reports and crime reports based on what you feel or what you think that you observed, the very least that you need, I mean, to some degree, in my opinion, is a college degree. Like, college degree is like an easy standard. I can barely get a job treating folks in any capacity, even like supportive therapy, with a degree and ample experience in nonprofit. So it's like, in other places we hold people to higher standards. Why are police not held to a higher educational standard? But I guess that's a completely different conversation for another day. But it almost seems to me that we're okay with police being able to do the bare minimum. I mean, just in general, not necessarily with entry requirements, but I think that's where it starts.
Okay, got you. Okay, any comment, Drew?
I'm just kind of absorbing right now and listening to y'all talking.
Okay, all right. So that whole defunding and abolish police, I think when folks start coming from the protesting and sit down, they'll begin to figure out, okay, well, police got to have a certain amount of dollars just to function and be able to respond to calls. And then you just got to figure out, okay, well, where does the money come from to help homelessness, to help mental health? Who's going to pay for that? Is it something that we can move from police to, the police budget to that? Or is it like, again, like we're set up in Durham that all the soft services are open in county? And do we need to start paying attention and go, okay, county folks, you need to increase, make more stuff. So once people come in and start having it and figure out whose dollars are responsible for what, and then like Steve said, now you need to be accountable for doing what you need to do with that money. Because we need to have police officers stop running around arresting homeless people because they ain't got nowhere to go. And that's just not cool. But that's the only thing we have. That's the only tool we have because we're the popo. And
right.
So, and you need to give us something else to do. So, okay. Yes.
Just like, I guess when hearing you say that about, I didn't know the thing about there were certain sectors of what the money from the police goes and then the money from the county goes and how that's different. So I guess like, it's just the way is just to go and ask the police officers where this money goes, because I didn't know that. So that's not common knowledge for like the regular lay citizen that just wouldn't generally know. So they don't know who to ask for money from or where to go to ask that. So would people just go to the police officers or police department and ask, how do I get in contact with the right people to get this money directed the right way? Or how does that go to the elected official? Or where do these questions go? How do people get this knowledge? Or how would I get this knowledge?
Yeah, it's basically set up that way. Usually, and Harmony, you might need to help me with, but usually city takes care of your what they call hard services: water, street, sanitation, police, stuff like that. That's what you call your hard services. Your soft services are usually most often always with county government. So mainly you just go to the county government. That's where your health department is, the social services. That's where you get your checks from. All of that is in the county. So people wanting to increase those services is make them more available to individuals in the community. You just go directly to your county services. So you would go to Durham County government and they would have all that there. So that's just how that works. City takes care of, they always call it the hard service, and county government takes care of the soft services.
But correct me if I'm wrong, BJ, most of these funds are at least partially funded by taxpayers. Is that right?
Oh, all of it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, all of it is. And see, that's the other thing. I mean, we're getting ready to go down another rabbit hole, but the bottom line is, so you want this to happen, you're going to have to follow that dollar, because eventually you got to figure you're going to have to pay for that. You're going to have to pay to increase social workers. You're going to have to pay to have folks trained to do these things that you're asking. And then the piece that we're trying to figure out is that, can money from the city, who's a city entity, you help with that money in to county? So that's where things start to get a little murky, and it just depends on how municipalities are set up across the country. What does that look like? So yes, taxes are going to go up. If you want all this, you're going to have to pay for some of this. And so nobody's really exactly talking about that right now, but it's going to be expensive, because now you got to have homeless shelters, you got to have mental health workers, you got to have blah blah. I mean, all of that. And again, like Steve said, if these people step up, then law enforcement can kind of reduce their responsibilities, and they won't, because now they'll just be really doing what they're supposed to do, investigating crimes, doing traffic accidents, the stuff that they were built to do. Yeah. So anyway, okay, cool. The last thing I'll do is we kind of wind this down, is just kind of talk about why. I think I may have talked about a little bit again. I started this business in 2015, but just to kind of give you a little history about me. I was raised down in this eastern part of the state with my parents. The place that I'm coming from is just, law enforcement is a noble profession, and my role and the way that I think I was professionally was in a servant role. And doing that and making sure people understand that, when I'm listening to what folks say about, I mean, when you have folks say things to me like, in a white community, like, can you get some people down here to enforce speeding, right? I mean, I'm going to this white community and they're like, speeding is a problem and somebody's going to get hit. So I was like, okay. So I went down as a district commander and I told them, I said, look, my resources are limited. And I told them the story. I said, I have a 90-year-old black female. This is a true story. I have a 90-year-old black female who lives on the south side of Durham, who literally sleeps under her bed at night because she's afraid of a bullet coming through her house. Mm-hmm. So when I did, and I said, so you're asking me to have my resources come out here and monitor a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I have a 90-year-old woman that can't sleep in her own bed. You tell me where I need to send my resources.
Right.
Crickets, right? Because now they know what we're dealing with. And so that's the kind of relationship I would have in the community. Like, just be very honest with everybody. Can't sit on their front porch sometimes in these communities. And our goal was to try to make everybody safe. So when we talk about, what's going on now, I want to be able to help folks navigate law enforcement. Like these conversations that we're having, like Drew just said, oh, so who do we need to talk to about increasing social services? If you're not understanding the minutia that goes on in government, then it's easy to protest. And I'm not saying anything against protest, but it's easy to demand things until you get in the room and you go, oh, we got to do it this way. Because now you're in the room and you're sitting down and you're hearing something that's a different language that you weren't aware of. And I want to help people navigate that as they're protesting, because I want you to ask for the right thing. Like, I was just asked the other day about, where do we need to start looking? And we talked a little bit about basic law enforcement training, which is really basic. I mean, it's just enough, to be a law enforcement. So do we need to start looking at, and then you go join a police department. You're sponsored, you go to, and that's all you get. And you go, they say, go be a police in this particular small town, and that's what you get. But you come to Durham, they do BLET, and they add extra stuff on it. De-escalation training, communication. They put more stuff on top. But if you're in a small town, you may just get the BLET, right? That doesn't include de-escalation training, community policing training.
But are we seeing, like, I guess my question for that is, like, are we seeing these smaller police departments, are they killing people? You know what I mean? And I don't want to say at the same rate, because obviously if it's smaller, they're going to have less people, thus less interactions. But it seems like a lot of these instances of people being killed are from these larger police departments that should have these more intense and, I guess, just more holistic type of trainings.
Yeah, they should. I guess I want to look at all of it, because I think, I don't know what I mentioned to you guys how many, there are like 18,000, right? Police departments across the country. So, yeah,
okay.
So they're actually 17,000, to be actually the exact number, 17,985. 15,500 of 50 or less personnel.
Wow.
The minorities are large organizations. So I hear what you're saying. And those are the ones that the media that are constantly in our face and stuff like that.
Right. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. So, yes, because they're large. I'm not saying things aren't happening, but then when you start talking about those small towns that don't have the CJ Davis, and believe in community policing. So
right.
My thing is, I want to figure out how to help these small towns who they might still be doing what they do. And I'm not saying they're not killing anybody, but there's some things they probably shouldn't be doing. They need
right.
to be progressive and trying to help people navigate that, because the bulk of the agencies in this country, like I said, 15 out of the 17,000, 15,500 are less than 50.
Wow, that's insane. When you think about just like what that looks like.
Yes.
Most of them are really small. So
Yes.
Thank you for that. I'm just curious as to like, what does it look like, and smaller versus larger police forces. But like you said, like the media is obviously going to highlight,
Yes.
Larger cities. I mean, just as they do with anything, if it's a larger
Right.
scale, of course, it's going to get more attention.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's very interesting to me.
Yeah. So I just want to, because I'm working with a small agency now, and the thing is, they don't have so let's say a small town wants to do what a big town is doing, right? Okay, we want to do police reform too, right? So we go in, and that small town, that small police agency doesn't have the knowledge, doesn't understand how to track the data. You don't know how to ask for the data. You don't know how to buy the software to get the data information so you can figure out what your police department is doing. So that's the kind of stuff that, we hopefully this podcast will help people navigate and be able to understand what that language is. So you in a small community, because we have a crime analyst in the Durham Police Department. That's what that group does. They analyze all our data, which tells us where we need to be, how we need to, use our resources, where a lot of communities do not have that and stuff like that. So for me, I just want to give people a little bit more insight. For me, it's just all about communications and listening to folks, because that's your world. I'm just here to try to help you navigate it the best way that I can from a law enforcement perspective. It's a job, but I do it because I care, and then I want folks to understand that's what we're trying to do. So I guess that's about it. Oh, one last thing. I love cartoons. Old-fashioned cartoons, right? Bugs Bunny. And Charlie Brown, yeah, but cartoons, man. HBO has a new streaming called Cartoons, and they have removed the guns from Elmer Fudd and what's his name? What's the guy's Yosemite Sam? They no longer will have guns on their new streaming. They've taken the guns away from it, and I was like, it's a new world now that Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam not going to have anyone. They still have the Acme Advils and dynamite, though, so they're still blowing up stuff. They're just not shooting stuff. So I thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah. So anyway, it's just a me thing because I like cartoons because I'm old. I like old cartoons. So.
You were the only person that was going to mention that, BJ, because I'd had enough old people jokes for the day. So you hold on yourself with that one.
I did anyway. So anyway. All right, guys. You guys got any last words? Words of wisdom as we walk out of here?
I guess just kind of echoing what we said at the beginning, just about the mental health thing. Just kind of try your best to stay up and to stay positive. But hear your emotions, know that they are valid, and what you're going through is real. It's not real. That doesn't make any sense. But just listen to yourself and listen to your body, because your body can tell you more things than your mind can sometimes. So that's all.
Yeah, and thanks, Harmony, about that. So yeah, we'll definitely look at doing some of those links for sure.
Awesome.
On the website and podcast and all that. And just before too, I didn't get a chance to mention it. So, so you guys who knows, our team consists of Chris Downey and Abby Braditich, who is our social media gurus. Keep pushing us out there and helping us out, get the word out. So that's our team. And thanks for tuning in, and stay safe, stay well. Peace.